Zyla's heart pounded as she gripped Tyla tightly, her keen eyes scanning the shadowy forest for any sign of movement. The impact of the crash had left their small spacecraft battered and disabled, and now they were stranded on this primitive, unfamiliar world. Tyla whimpered softly, sensing her mother's distress. A twig snapped underfoot, and Zyla whirled around, her slender fingers curling around a jagged metal shard, ready to defend her daughter at all costs. But the figure that emerged from the darkness was not the hulking predator she had expected. Instead, it was a human male, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Easy there," he called out in a gentle tone. "I'm not going to hurt you." Zyla's posture remained tense, but something in the human's demeanor gave her pause. He was of average height, his features softened by an expression of open curiosity rather than hostility. Slowly, she lowered the makeshift weapon, her golden eyes narrowing as she studied him. The human took a cautious step forward. "My name is Jack. I live in the town nearby, and I heard the commotion from your crash landing. Are you all right?" His gaze flickered to Tila, who had pressed herself against Tyla's side, her large, luminous eyes fixed on this strange new creature. Zyla's protective instincts warred with her growing sense of intrigue. "We are unharmed," she replied haltingly, the unfamiliar human tongue feeling clumsy on her tongue. "Our ship is damaged, and we have nowhere to go." Jack's brow furrowed with concern. "Well, you're welcome to come back to my place. I've got tools and supplies that might help you get your ship flying again." He paused, his gaze sweeping over their disheveled appearance. "And you both look like you could use a warm meal and a place to rest." Zyla's grip on Tila tightened as she considered the offer, every fiber of her being screamed to flee, to whisk her daughter away from these strange, potentially dangerous beings. But the human's earnest expression and the genuine concern in his voice gave her pause. And Tyla, her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and fascination, rather than the terror Tyla had expected. "I appreciate your offer," Tyla said cautiously, "but I must be cautious. My daughter and I are not from this world, and we do not know the ways of your people." Jack nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I understand. This must be a terrifying situation for you both." He glanced up at the night sky, his gaze lingering on the faint glimmer of distant stars. "But I can assure you, we humans may be strange and confusing, but most of us mean no harm, and I'd be honored to try and help you get your ship back into the stars." Zyla's resolve wavered as she studied the human's open, earnest features. There was a kindness in his eyes that stirred something deep within her, a yearning for the safety and comfort she and Tyla had lost. Slowly, she inclined her head. "Then we will accompany you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyla's small hand slipped into hers, and Zyla gave it a gentle squeeze, steeling herself for the unknown that lay ahead. As Jack led Zyla and Tyla back to his small town, the alien mother couldn't help but marvel at the strange, bustling world around her. The streets were lined with oddly shaped structures, their windows glowing with warm light. Humans of all ages hurried past, their faces wearing a curious mixture of expressions, some openly staring at the newcomers, others barely sparing them a glance. Tyla clung tightly to Zyla's hand, her eyes wide with equal parts wonder and trepidation. Zyla could feel the girl's pulse racing, and she gave her daughter's fingers a reassuring squeeze, silently promising to keep her safe. Jack seemed to sense their unease, and he flashed them an encouraging smile. "Don't worry, you two," he said in a low voice. "The folks around here might be a bit nosy, but they're mostly harmless. I'll make sure you're taken care of." As they approached a modest, single-story dwelling, a group of children playing in the street paused to stare openly at the strange visitors. Zyla felt a surge of protectiveness, her muscles tensing, but Jack waved at the youngsters with a warm smile. "Hey, kids, this is Tyla and Tyla. They're going to be staying with me for a while." The children's eyes widened, and they broke into excited whispers, darting furtive glances at the alien pair. Jack ushered Tyla and Tyla inside, closing the door firmly behind them. Zyla found herself in a cozy, cluttered space filled with odd trinkets and half-finished mechanical projects. The air was thick with the scent of grease and oil, a far cry from the sterile, minimalist interiors of her homeworld. "Welcome to my humble abode," Jack said with a chuckle, gesturing around the room. "It's not much, but it's home." He turned to Zyla, his expression earnest. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. I'll get you both something to eat and drink." As Jack bustled off to the adjoining kitchen, Zyla took a moment to survey her surroundings, cataloging every detail. Zyla, her initial fear slowly ebbing, began to explore the room, her small fingers trailing along the edge of a workbench cluttered with tools and spare parts. "Zyla, stay close," Zyla murmured, her golden eyes vigilant. The human's kindness had caught her off guard, and she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were dangerously out of their element. Jack returned shortly, carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Here you go. It's just some hot tea, but I hope it helps warm you up." He handed one to Zyla, who accepted it with a hesitant nod. "And I've got some sandwiches coming, if you're hungry." Zyla inhaled the fragrant steam, her keen senses cataloging the unfamiliar scents and flavors. Zyla peered up at her, silently pleading for a taste, and Zyla took a cautious sip, savoring the unexpected warmth that spread through her. "This is quite good," she admitted, her brow furrowing in surprise. Jack beamed, clearly pleased by her reaction. "I'm glad you like it. Feel free to make yourselves at home. I'll be in the workshop if you need anything. I'm going to take a look at your ship, see if I can get it up and running again." As Jack departed, Zyla settled onto a worn, cushioned chair, Tilla curling up beside her. The girl's eyes were already growing heavy, the day's events wearing on her small frame. Zyla draped an arm protectively around her daughter, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. Could they truly trust this human? And if so, what would that mean for their future? Over the next few days, Zyla and Tilla began to settle into the rhythm of life in Jack's small town. The human mechanic proved to be a gracious and attentive host, ensuring their basic needs were met and providing Zyla with the tools and materials she needed to begin repairing their damaged spacecraft. Despite her lingering unease, Zyla found herself increasingly drawn to Jack's easygoing nature and genuine compassion. He treated Tilla like a beloved daughter, showering the young girl with attention and affection that seemed to ease the heartache of losing her own father. As Zyla worked alongside Jack in his workshop, she couldn't help but notice the way his calloused hands moved with practiced precision, coaxing life back into the intricate alien machinery. His insatiable curiosity about their origins and technology only fueled her growing respect for this peculiar human. But their fragile sense of security was shattered one afternoon when a trio of uniformed officials arrived at Jack's doorstep, their faces set in stern expressions. "Ma'am, sir, we've received reports of suspicious activity in this area," the lead officer announced, his gaze sweeping over Zyla and Tilla with open suspicion. "We'd like to ask you a few questions." Zyla's heart leaped into her throat, and she gripped Tilla's hand tightly. Jack stepped forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "What seems to be the problem, officers? I can assure you, there's nothing suspicious going on here." The officer's lips tightened into a thin line. "We've had reports of an unregistered spacecraft crashing in the nearby woods, and we've noticed some unusual activity around your property." His eyes narrowed as they settled on Zyla and Tilla. "We need to verify your identities and conduct a search of the premises." Zyla felt the blood drain from her face. They had been so careful, so cautious. How could their presence have been discovered so quickly? She shot a panicked glance at Jack, silently pleading with him to intervene. To her surprise, the human mechanic stepped forward, squaring his shoulders. "I'm sorry, officers, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. "These two are my family, and I won't have you harassing them." The lead officer's brows shot up in surprise, and he exchanged a puzzled look with his colleagues. "Your family, you say?" He eyed Scylla and Tyla skeptically. I find that hard to believe. Jack lifted his chin defiantly. It's the truth. Scylla and Tyla are my wife and adopted daughter. I won't let you barge in and accuse them of anything without cause. Scylla stared at Jack, her golden eyes wide with a mixture of shock and gratitude. The human was risking everything to protect them. A gesture that both terrified and humbled her. The officers seemed taken aback by Jack's adamant defense, their expressions shifting from suspicion to uncertainty. After a tense moment, the lead officer let out a frustrated sigh. Very well, he grumbled. But we'll be keeping an eye on this place. If we hear one more report of anything strange going on, we'll be back. With that, the trio turned and strode away, leaving Jack, Scylla, and Tyla in stunned silence. After the confrontation with the authorities, the air in Jack's modest home was thick with tension. Scylla paced the floor, her golden eyes alight with a mixture of fear and fury, while Tyla huddled on the couch, her small frame trembling. What were you thinking, human? Scylla hissed, rounding on Jack. Claiming us as your own family. Do you have any idea of the consequences we now face? Jack met her gaze steadily, his expression resolute. I was thinking that I couldn't just stand by and watch them harass you and Tyla, he replied evenly. You're both in danger, and I won't abandon you to face it alone. Scylla clenched her fists, her slender fingers digging into her palms. You've put us all at risk with your reckless actions, she snapped. Now the authorities will be watching your every move, and we may never be able to leave this planet safely. To her surprise, Jack reached out and gently grasped her arm, his calloused fingers sending a jolt of electricity through her. Tyla, listen to me. I know you're scared, but we'll figure this out together. I'm not going to let anything happen to you or Tyla. Scylla stared at him, her heart pounding in her ears. This human's unwavering determination and concern for their well-being both confounded and touched her. Tyla, sensing the shift in the air, rose from the couch and crept to Scylla's side, her large eyes pleading. Mother, please, the young girl murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Scylla's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from her. She pulled Tyla into a fierce embrace, silently cursing the circumstances that had brought them to this strange, perilous world. But as she held her daughter close, a realization began to dawn. Perhaps in this human, she had found an unexpected ally. In the days that followed, Tyla and Jack worked tirelessly to complete the repairs on her damaged spacecraft, all the while keeping a wary eye out for any sign of the authorities. Jack's mechanical expertise and Scylla's intimate knowledge of the alien technology proved to be a formidable combination, and slowly the ship began to take shape. During their long hours in the workshop, Tyla found herself drawn to the human's unwavering determination and kind-hearted nature. He treated Tyla with the same affection and care he would his own child, and Scylla marveled at the ease with which he adapted to their alien customs and mannerisms. As the final pieces fell into place, Tyla found herself torn. The prospect of returning to her homeworld, of reclaiming the life she once knew, was a seductive one. But a growing part of her was reluctant to leave this human and the unexpected bond they had forged. Tyla, sensing her mother's inner turmoil, would often pause in her work to reach out and squeeze Tyla's hand, her wide eyes brimming with unspoken understanding. Tyla knew that her daughter had grown fond of Jack as well, and the thought of tearing them apart filled her with a profound sense of dread. The day of their departure drew near, and Scylla found herself increasingly drawn to the human mechanic. His kindness, his unwavering loyalty, and the way he had so effortlessly become a part of their lives had left an indelible mark on her heart. As she stood before the repaired spacecraft, ready to embark on the journey home, Scylla knew that the choice that lay before her was one of the most difficult she had ever faced. The decision weighed heavily on Scylla's mind as the days ticked by. She knew that the longer they remained on Earth, the greater the risk of the authorities discovering their true nature. But the thought of leaving Jack and Tyla behind was like a knife to her heart. As Tyla and Jack put the final touches on the repaired spacecraft, the tension in the air was palpable. Tyla, sensing her mother's distress, often sought comfort in Jack's warm embrace, her small fingers clinging to the human's shirt. Jack, for his part, seemed equally torn, his brow furrowed with concern as he watched Tyla wrestle with her choice. One evening, as they sat around the modest dinner table, Tyla finally broached the subject. "Jack, I must return to my homeworld," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is no longer safe for Tyla and I to remain here." Jack's face fell, and Tyla let out a soft whimper, her large eyes brimming with tears. "I was afraid you'd say that," Jack murmured, reaching across the table to give Tyla's hand a gentle squeeze. "I wish I could convince you to stay, but I understand the risks you're facing." Tyla felt her heart clench at the genuine sorrow in his expression. I do not wish to leave you, Jack," she admitted, her own eyes shining with unused tears. "You have become a part of our lives, and the thought of parting ways." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Jack's grip on her hand tightened, and he leaned in, his gaze steady and resolute. "Then don't go," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Stay here with Tyla and me. We can find a way to keep you both safe, I promise." Tyla's eyes widened in surprise. "But the authorities, they will never stop searching for us. We would always be looking over our shoulders, never truly free." "Then let's leave this place," Jack said, his expression determined. "We can take your ship and find somewhere else to call home. Somewhere far away from prying eyes. Somewhere we can all be safe together." Tyla stared at him, stunned by the depth of his offer. You would come with us," she whispered, scarcely daring to believe it. Jack nodded, a small wistful smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Wherever you and Tyla go, that's where I want to be. You both have become so important to me, Tyla. I can't bear the thought of losing you." Tyla had been watching the exchange with rapt attention, her eyes darting between her mother and the human she had come to see as a father. Now she reached across the table, her small hand covering Jack's and Tyla's entwined fingers. "Please, Mother," the girl pleaded, her voice trembling. "Don't leave us. I want to stay with Jack." Tyla felt the last of her resolve crumbling, the weight of her decision crushing her. She pulled Tyla into a fierce embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks as she made the painful choice to abandon her homeworld and everything she had ever known. "Then we shall leave this place, together," she murmured, her gaze locking with Jack's. In that moment, she knew that she had found a new home, not in the stars, but in the warm, steadfast embrace of this extraordinary human. With their decision made, Tyla, and Jack set to work, hastily packing what few belongings they could carry and making the final preparations for their risky escape. The threat of the persistent authorities loomed over them like a dark cloud, and the trio knew that they had little time to spare. As night fell, they slipped out of Jack's modest home. Tyla and Tyla cloaked in the shadows, their alien features obscured. Jack took the lead, his expression grim but resolute, guiding them through the deserted streets towards the forest, where Tyla's spacecraft lay hidden. "Are you sure about this?" "Hi, Tyla," Jack whispered, casting a worried glance over his shoulder. "There's no turning back once we leave." Tyla's golden eyes were steely with determination. "I have never been more certain of anything, Jack. Tyla and I belong with you now." She reached out and gave his hand a gentle squeeze, drawing strength from his unwavering presence. They reached the spacecraft without incident, and Tyla quickly ushered Tyla inside, her keen senses scanning the area for any sign of their pursuers. Jack followed close behind, his expression tense as he double-checked the ship's systems. "All right, let's get this thing airborne," he murmured, his fingers flying across the unfamiliar controls. "Where are we headed?" Tyla paused, her mind racing. I had not planned that far ahead," she admitted, her brow furrowing with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "My homeworld would be the safest option, but the authorities there may still be searching for us. Jack's gaze met hers, resolute and unwavering. Then we'll find someplace else, someplace they'll never think to look. I trust you, Tyla. You know the stars better than I do. Guide us to a new home, a fresh start for all of us. Tyla felt a surge of gratitude and affection for this extraordinary human, this man who had so willingly uprooted his life to join her and Tyla on their uncertain journey. With a nod, she set to work, her fingers dancing across the controls as she plotted a course through the vast expanse of space. The spacecraft lurched into motion, and Tyla could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Tyla, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement, clung to her mother's arm, while Jack gripped the pilot's seat, his knuckles white. As they left the planet's atmosphere behind, Tyla couldn't help but steal one last glance back at the small, unassuming town they were abandoning. A bittersweet pang of nostalgia tugged at her heart, but it was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of relief and determination that coursed through her. "Hold on tight, my family," she murmured, her gaze fixed on the endless sea of stars before them. "We are going home." In the distance, a lone set of headlights flashed across the darkened forest, the authorities arriving too late to stop the trio's daring escape. With a frustrated growl, the lead officer radioed in the news, his brow furrowed with a mixture of confusion and begrudging respect. "They're gone," he said simply, his voice tinged with a hint of awe. "But we'll find them. No one disappears from this planet without us knowing where they ended up." And so the chase began, as the authorities set their sights on the stars, determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious alien visitors and the human who had dared to shield them. As the spacecraft hurtled through the vast expanse of space, Tyla kept a watchful eye on the sensors, scanning for any signs of pursuit. Jack manned the controls, his brow furrowed with concentration, while Tyla huddled close to her mother, her small fingers gripping Tyla's hand tightly. "How much longer until we reach our destination?" Jack asked, his voice betraying the slightest hint of fatigue. Tyla studied the navigational display, her keen eyes tracing the projected course. "At our current speed, we should arrive within the next few hours," she replied, her tone steady and assured. "But we must remain vigilant. The authorities may still be searching for us." Jack nodded, his gaze settling on Tyla's worried face. "Don't worry, kiddo," he said, mustering a reassuring smile. "We're gonna be just fine. Your mom and I won't let anything happen to you." Tyla managed a small, tremulous smile, but Tyla could see the lingering fear in her daughter's eyes. The weight of their decision to flee Earth was heavy on all of them, and Tyla knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with uncertainty and peril. As the spacecraft drew closer to their destination, Tyla found herself increasingly drawn to Jack, their bond forged in the crucible of their shared ordeal. She watched him tenderly care for Tyla, his gentle touch and soothing words easing the girl's anxiety, and felt a surge of affection that she had never expected to experience for a human. When they finally reached the remote, uncharted planet Tyla had chosen as their new home, she turned to Jack, her golden eyes shining with emotion. "Jack, I do not know how to thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have risked everything to be here with us, and she faltered, the words catching in her throat. Jack reached out and grasped her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with her own. "Tyla, you don't have to thank me," he murmured, his warm brown eyes locked onto hers. "I'm exactly where I want to be, with you and Tyla. This is our home now, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." Tyla, sensing the shift in the air, crept closer, her small form pressed against Tyla's side. "Does this mean we can stay here, Mother?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. "Forever?" Tyla felt a pang of sorrow as she gazed down at her daughter, her heart torn between the promise of a new life and the ache of the one she had left behind. "Yes, my darling," she said softly, pulling Tyla into a tight embrace. "This is our home now." As the trio stepped out onto the alien soil, Scylla knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but in the steadfast presence of Jack and the unconditional love of her daughter, she felt a sense of peace and determination that she had never known before. Their journey had been shaped by the threads of fate, but it was the bonds they had forged that would guide them through the trials to come. And in that moment, Scylla knew that she had found the true meaning of home, not in the stars, but in the warm embrace of the family she had chosen. In the days that followed, Scylla, Tyla, and Jack set about the task of creating a new life on the remote, uncharted planet they had chosen as their sanctuary. The landscape was harsh and unfamiliar, but with their combined resourcefulness and determination, they began to carve out a home amidst the rugged terrain. Scylla marveled at the way Jack seamlessly integrated himself into their daily routines, his mechanical expertise and problem-solving skills proving invaluable as they worked to establish a sustainable living environment. Tyla, too, seemed to thrive in their new surroundings, her laughter and playful spirit a constant source of joy for the small family. But as they settled into their newfound rhythm, Scylla couldn't shake the nagging sense of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. The authorities on Earth had not given up their pursuit, and she knew that it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. One evening, as she and Jack sat together in the modest dwelling they had constructed, Scylla broached the subject, her golden eyes filled with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. "Jack, we cannot remain here forever," she said softly, her fingers tracing the worn fabric of the cushion she sat upon. "The authorities will never stop searching for us." Jack reached out and grasped her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with her own. "I know, Scylla," he murmured, his expression heavy with sorrow. "But I don't want to leave this place. I don't want to leave you and Tyla." Scylla felt her heart clench at the pain in his voice. "I do not wish to part ways either, my dear Jack," she admitted, her own eyes shining with unshed tears. "But our safety, and Tyla's, must come first." They sat in a heavy silence, the weight of their impending separation hanging between them. Tyla, sensing the somber mood, crept into the room, her large eyes filled with concern. "Mother, what's wrong?" the girl asked, her small voice barely above a whisper. Tyla pulled Tyla into her lap, holding her close. "My darling, I must return to my homeworld," she said, her voice wavering. "It is no longer safe for us to remain here." Tyla's eyes widened in dismay, and she clung to Scylla, her tiny body racked with sobs. "No, Mother, I don't want to go. I want to stay with Jack." Jack moved to Tyla's side, his expression anguished as he gathered the girl into his arms. It's okay, Tyla," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll take care of you, I promise." Scylla watched the heartbreaking scene, her own tears spilling down her cheeks. "Jack, I must ask you to do something for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack looked up, his gaze filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Anything, Scylla, anything at all. I need you to promise me that you will keep Tyla safe," Scylla said, her golden eyes boring into his. "Promise me that you will be the father she deserves, the one I can no longer be." Jack's eyes widened, and for a long moment he was silent. Then, with a heavy sigh, he nodded, his grip on Tyla tightening. "I promise, Tyla. I'll protect her with my life." Tyla let out a shaky breath, her heart breaking as she realized the magnitude of the sacrifice she was about to make. But as she gazed upon the family she had found, she knew that there was no other choice. With a heavy heart, she rose to her feet, her final farewell to Tyla and Jack etched upon her features. "Then this is goodbye, my loved ones," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Live well and be happy." And with that, she turned and walked away, her heart shattering with each step, her tears reflecting the stars that would guide her back to the world she had left behind.